Welcome back to another episode of Lifelong Learners. I am your host, Holly Tetreault, and today we're diving into autism and special interests. So come along with me as we take a dive into the world of autism and special interests. For this episode, I want to talk about my experience with autism and how I use stuffed animals to cope with stress. When I was younger, around 3 or 4 years old, I knew I was different from my classmates. During lunch at Pearl Roads Elementary School, I had a hard time with the loud noise in the cafeteria. I remember putting my hands over my ears because the noise was too much for me. One of my teachers had to give me a pair of noise-canceling headphones. Before my family had to move to Turner's Falls, I noticed other behaviors that I would do, including reading the same books over and over. The sensitivity to sound was the big red flag for me because I knew something was going on with me, but I didn't have the words back then to tell mom. Some other things I noticed after my parents got divorced many years ago. I was scared to sleep by myself. I was afraid to trust people because I feared that they would abandon me, just like my father did many years ago. I started collecting stuffed animals to not only help me cope with everyday stress, but when I found out in April 2012 that I had autism, my stuffed animals not only brought me joy, but when I'm having an off day, having a stuffed animal to squeeze and hug is helpful. I have been collecting stuffed animals since the age of 13, and the types of stuffed animals I have include Hello Kitties, Beanie Babies, My Little Pony, Garfield, Dr. Seuss characters, and Snoopy and Woodstock stuffed animals. I get this question a lot. How many stuffed animals do you have? I don't have a clear answer, but if I could sit down and count them, I would probably have about 100 stuffed animals. Now, when I first got my autism diagnosis, there wasn't much known about autism in 2012. And during this time, autism was called pervasive developmental disorder. Even before my diagnosis, kids were bullying me and making fun of me, not only because I was the new kid, but I had a hard time in social situations. There were times where the bullying was so bad that I was afraid to go to school because I didn't want to go to a place where my classmates were judging me for who I was as a person. I found it difficult at times to focus on my schoolwork because I always feared as a kid if I showed my strengths, then some people may think that I don't fit in with other people my age. It was harder as I got older to continue to mask the other side of me. Having autism as a female, there is so much stigma for women to fit in with their neurotypical peers. After masking my autistic traits for over 10 years, it's been hard for me to unmask who I am and be accepting of my stimming and sensory overload. It's taken many years of learning what stimming and sensory overload are like for someone who has autism. Stimming is a way for individuals who need to self-soothe. They can tap their feet, flap their hands, rock back and forth, and many other kinds of stimming that soothe that person. Sensory overload occurs when a person's sensory system is overloaded due to overstimulation and stress and many other factors. The sensory system for someone on the autism spectrum consists of sight, sound, smell, and taste. A sensory overload can set off one of the 5 senses, or it can set off all 5 of them. It depends on the individual and the amount of stimulation. My sensory issues are more sound related. In some situations, I have to bring a pair of noise-canceling headphones because loud noises when I am out in public cause me to stim and melt down from all the sound that I take in each day. Having sensory issues can make it challenging to function on a daily basis, and it can be hard for me to tell anyone that I am struggling with sensory overload. Sometimes I only have seconds before one or all of my sensory systems are yelling at me. It can look like that I don't want to talk to anybody, but my voice can't tell you that I need help or I need to leave the situation. My body just shuts down during these episodes. I still, to this day, face many challenges due to the stigma of how people interpret women and girls having autism, because most people think that only boys are getting diagnosed with autism. Now, with the growing acceptance of autism and more people getting diagnosed earlier in life, I'm hoping that we can break the cycle so that we can help more people get an earlier diagnosis so they can get the support they need early in life. I don't want anyone to go through what I had to go through in life to get a diagnosis of autism. It was hard for me not having a diagnosis until age 11, and just the trauma I had to go through in elementary school. In 4th grade, one of my classmates made fun of me at the end of the day, and the comments were so mean that I walked out of the classroom in tears. Also, having to navigate social situations and not knowing how to start a conversation was hard for me. This led to me having a lot of anxiety, and most of the time I did not want to socialize with my peers. I had noticed from a young age that I would want to hang out with people who were younger than me, because I found those social interactions less intimidating and I enjoyed it more. There are times where I wish I knew sooner that I had autism, so I had the language to tell the teachers what I was feeling and how hard it was to fit in with other people my age. My stuffed animals were the one thing I had growing up, and over the years, this special interest of mine has helped me to cope with dental anxiety, and I pretty much take a whole bag of my favorite stuffed animals wherever I go. I use the soft texture of these animals as a way to soothe myself in times of stress. I mentioned earlier in my podcast that I collect stuffed animals, and for me, I can't just have one stuffed animal. I gotta have multiple stuffed animals. Also, collecting items, for example, like stuffed animals, is my special interest, and it brings me so much happiness and joy. I want to thank everyone for tuning into today's episode. Today we covered autism and special interests. Once again, I want to thank GCC and everybody in the recording studio for helping me get my autism story out there. Make sure you tune in for the next episode where we talk about all things neurodiversity.